All right, so what's a grower to do on a nice warm day? What did we do last week? I talked about root tracing. We did a demonstration, I believe, on root tracing. Our apple tree that was stubborn, didn't really want to fruit, had some issues. Yeah, its issue was that it liked to grow leaves, produce leaves, but not produce fruit. So we're going to take care of that in another way today. Actually, and I'm also intending to do a how-to video on how to make bone meal for this particular amend that I'm about to make. Be sure to check in the links for when that's going to happen. But for now, let's pretend we know how to make bone meal, or we know how to buy bone meal, or we have bone meal on hand already. In any event, what I've done is I've taken a moment to, I'll turn you around and you can see my setup right. I've taken a moment to go ahead and measure out 1 pound of bone meal. The diameter of the trunk on my apple tree is 6 inches, and typically the prescription is to apply roughly, 1 pound per 2 inches of root trunk diameter. And I'm not going to do that. It's too much. I rely on the soil food web, so follow me along with this regard. I'm going to put a third of that amount down, and I'm going to spread it around the weep line between where I did the root tracing and underneath the canopy of the actual apple tree. I'm going to spread it around right there, and then we're going to let the rain wash it in. We're supposed to get some rain tonight, so hopefully that'll happen. It doesn't always happen. They say it's going to rain. Maybe not. Maybe it will. Who knows? But let's take a walk out to the garden, and I'll show you how I prepare the ground before I apply it. And then really it's basically 2 simple steps, aside from, well, let's go have a look. So check it out. Here's Exhibit A. This is my apple tree and my dog's doghouse. He likes to hang out there sometimes. But take a look at the apple tree. I'm going to show you right on the ground right there where I actually did the root tracing, just below the weep line of this apple tree. And I'm going to sort of delineate it with my rake by raking back the chips just a little tiny bit so that I can get down to some of the more broken down soils that are actually supporting this thing. And then I'm going to take this container right here and apply it all the way around. So let's see how that goes. All right, so let me do my best to give you an explanation for what I just did. Basically what I did was, the other day, I went around and I performed a root tracing around the outside of this particular apple tree's roots, just beneath the widest reach of its weep line. You can kind of see that. It's easy to tell where the rain would drip at its widest point around the outside of the tree. That's where my intent was to sever the roots right there and stress the tree, intentionally stressing the tree. As a response to stress, the tree's going to very strongly consider making fruit so that it can assure itself survival of its species in the up and coming season. So in any event, I also want to give the tree an opportunity to have some nutrients just because I can. This is the time of the year that I'm making bone meal. I had some bone meal left over from the last season when I made it last year, and my intent is to put that bone meal down in this zone where I've essentially raked back the coarsest wood chips, and I'm going to incorporate it into the soil. And when I'm done incorporating it to the soil, the second step, after I've raked the wood chips back and everything looks like it did before I began this, it'll look normal again. But once I've completed that step, I'm actually going to come back with a fungal-based compost tea, because the bones are hard. They're really hard to break up, and bacteria is not the only thing that can do it or will do it. And in most cases, it's the fungi that produces the acids that break up things like phosphorus and calcium and things of the hard mineral nature. They are very, very good at taking care of those things and then rendering it all accessible to the rhizophagy cycle. So I want to give that the best possible chance and opportunity for thrive. So you're going to see me in the next scene here. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to spread this pound out, not that liberally, but I'm going to spread it out enough to get it all the way around the tree. I'm going to be careful to, end where I started. Let's have a look at how that goes. So for those of you who may have allergies and sensitivities to dusty environments, I highly recommend you wear a mask. You can see that I spread it essentially all the way around in the trough and inwards towards the trunk of the tree. Well, not right up against the trunk of the tree, definitely towards the trunk of the tree. All I'm going to do next after this is simply rake the coarse cover back over the top of it, giving it an opportunity to lock it all in. That gives me time to go down and fetch some compost tea, or if I haven't already done so, it gives me an opportunity to basically go and make some fungal-rich compost tea. You could speculate that because there's wood chips on top that it would already be fungal-rich. But in a lot of cases, especially based on assumption alone, we find through examination that that's just simply not so. You see, one of the early colonists to wood chips is in fact a bacteria. It's a bacteria that used to be confused with a fungus. So much in fact that its name also implies that it was a fungus or has some meaning of fungi in it. And based by today's understanding, we know now that it's actually a bacteria, and it's none other than actinomycetes. And you're all welcome to look it up on the web, on the interweb, gain a better understanding of this particular early colonist to wood chips, and then you'll certainly have a better idea as to why it shows up to the dinner table sooner than fungi. So rather than me just assume that I have fungal symbiotes or fungal mutualists or saprophytes or any other type of fungi that's involved here, integrated with the apple tree, I could even assume that I may have some symbiotes that are attached to the roots of this tree. They could be fungal in nature as well. But so far through my examinations, and I haven't put them there, I have not found that to be the case. So we are essentially working from the beginning, from scratch. So bear with me, and maybe we'll cover how to do that. How to inoculate your hardwood or softwood trees or your fruit or nut trees with fungal symbiotes found in your own environment. That'd be a great subject for me to cover at a later date. But at this point right now, we're talking about, hey, let's make sure that we have some nutrients already in play. If they're in play, we know they're there. If I go ahead and I take the extra step and I actually take a compost tea that's rich in fungus and fungi already that are involved, actively involved in the process of decomposition, recomposition will occur just as efficiently. So if it's in your compost, it can be in your compost tea, and it can be moved over here right to the apple tree. Kind of like how that worked out. Okay, so I'm going to take this opportunity to make a quick cut, grab my rake, fix this all up so y'all see that I'm not pulling your leg. My rake is over my right shoulder. We're going to use it. Okay, just a little more dialogue. So if any of y'all are curious as to why Creedmoor didn't just spread it out all over the place willy-nilly, it's because I actually have other crops that are growing here. One of the things that I like to do in my gardens is I like to keep things growing all the time. I learned a long time ago that even though Mr. Frost came into town and froze everything out, guess what? You could get up, get out of your rocking chair, get off your lazy chair, get off your keister, and get out there and walk around in the freezing snow and freezing rain. And you know what? You'll probably find something that's still alive. Find those species and bring them, root them into your zone. There's a reason for this. There's a huge reason why I do this. And it's not something that I discuss. And it goes well beyond symbiosis in a way that we can comprehend as humans. You know what? If you stopped in today, you might learn something. It's about intercropping and bringing other crops into places, not where they wouldn't ordinarily be, but where they already engaged in niches where they're doing well, where they're thriving. This particular area right here, if I grow it, it thrives here. Okay, so we'll get that clear right out of the gate. When I haven't grown something and I go to growing it, it usually begins to thrive. Not too far after, because I apply some simple and steadfast principles to the whole entire process of growing. Okay, but I want to go further than that. Let's just say you are engaged in that really well, and you've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 different species of plants. Engaging in the rhizophagy process, the feeding of roots, the sharing of root exudates with the soil below, with the microbes in the soil. When you've got a whole bunch of these different species of plants in an area, in a consolidated area, amazing things happen. The plants and the soils, they gain access to something that's called quorum sensing. And quorum sensing allows this very intricate integration of high efficiency systems based on the life forces that exist within the soils that you've developed over the years. This is not something that happens in dead soils. It's something that happens in highly efficient soils, soils that have shown to grow plants, various different types of plants, not monoculture. I mean different types of plants, different species of plants. Your soil, when it grows a whole bunch of those different ones, you've probably got some pretty efficient soil. You've got a lot of functional microbes in the soil. You've got a lot of stuff going in your direction. Your ecology is probably recovering, or it's already been recovered. So in this particular case, right here just beneath my apple tree, how this applies is within this apple tree, there's 7 or 8 different species of plants. You may not be able to see them, but they're here. There's garlic at my feet. For some reason, they're growing slow, but they're popping up. I don't know. Hey, I don't make the rules. There's onions here. There's columbine here. There's onions on the opposite side. And then, of course, there's an apple right in the middle of it. Off to the side that you can't see, there's carrots and thyme. On the other side, there's oregano. All of these things contribute to the soil and the soil food web of things. They all contribute to the ultimate energy and capacitance that your soil has. So, if you eliminate all of the things that prevent your plants from growing, what you're left with is everything that supports the plant's growth. And in this particular case, well, I am bringing an outside fertilizer to this equation because I do happen to eat organic chicken. I spend a little bit more money for it, but I get a better quality of chicken. So I like to utilize the bones from those chickens to make this particular type of bone meal, because in the past it's shown my plants are really happy to engage with it. And I always follow the same routine. I may rake back the soil on top and integrate it into the soil below so it's closer to the roots that are going to be absorbing the nutrients, so the multitudes of different organisms that are down there don't have to go far away to gain access to them. The fungi and the bacteria are going to begin to process these things. It's basically right here at the foot of the tree. Where else would we want to put it? We certainly don't want to put it across the farm. And since we don't rotate crops in Eden, because crops don't have legs and they don't typically walk, if they are rotated, it's one time daily, just like me and you, and that's it. If I was to move my crops all over the place, I'm just going to tell you right now, they have to reform these relationships with the soil creatures all over again. And you know what? You might not be a good steward of reassociating them, so if that's the case, they may never reassociate. And if they don't, what purpose did crop rotation mean to you? Just suggesting that, okay? I'm telling you, because I grow this, really, I grow a lot of the same plants in the same place over and over and over again. And one year I finally realized, hey, you know what? The plants seem to do better when we put them back where the root exudates were from the previous generation of plants. A little sciencey, right? Not really. Plants engage the soil microbes by dropping sugars and carbon into the soil. And then the microbes that are in the soil respond to this precisely, returning to them the grace that they offered. Yeah, it's like a two-way deal. They give and they get. In exchange, what do they get? In exchange, well, certainly if you're growing in a hard pan, some of these other microbes can get their way through the hard pan and gain access to nutrients and minerals or other things that they need, conjugates within the soil that they need to do what they're expected to for the plant they've engaged with. Okay? And if you get enough of these species together, it makes it even easier for them to find these nutrients because of the quorum sensing. It goes further than that. Sometimes one plant in a guild will sense an insect in its presence, and it will send a reaction not just through the air, but also down into the soils, where now it's sending these inputs into the soils where all of the life is saying, hey, we have an intruder, there's an intruder alert. And now all of a sudden the other plants begin to build compounds to protect themselves. Some of them are sharing those compounds. Folks, this is how life works. Through diversity, through sharing. And that's what I'm trying to do. Just a little share. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up because I already took way too much time. And I am looking down realizing I'm standing in some small garlics. And y'all have probably heard enough. So in the next step, I'm going to get some compost tea and give it a spray. Y'all are wondering what I'm doing, aren't you? You thought you were going to just sit there and I was just going to pour a little stuff on the ground. You didn't think I was going to take care of all the horizons, did you? Yeah. The fungal rich compost tea. We verified it with the microscope. Creedmoorfury lives in a place where there's lots of fungi blowing around in the wind. Some of them aren't so fun. Typically when I'm done pruning, I'll make another application of compost tea to the wounds so they can heal. I've already done this once. I'm going to do it again. I'm expecting rain later on. Once the rain lands here, it'll start working this compost tea into the ground. My plan was to use roughly a gallon to a gallon and a half, which is pretty easy to see when you're done. And if I needed less, I can move on sooner and share the compost tea with some other perennial plants or crops that I have growing. Why is that important? Because the plants and trees that grow for more than a single season tend to form associations with fungi in more meaningful ways. I know what's in my compost tea, so I know exactly what's going out and the potential that it has ahead of time. It's not that difficult to master the examination process. I'm a nerdy kind of guy, so I'm interested in those sorts of things, so stands to reason that eventually I would find that path anyway. What you see me here doing, I'm actually putting fungal-based compost tea on the tissue of the tree. And if there are any sugars that are leaching out or anything that is coming out of the branches from the pruning cuts, the bacteria and the fungi will coat those cuts and it will work towards sealing them up and healing them up. They'll build biofilms to slow the process down. They'll start to eat and consume those sugars. And as long as they are doing it, as long as I've got beneficial aerobe type microorganisms on the tree while this process is going on, I can be reasonably assured that they're doing it for the benefit of the tree and that it's going to prevent other more pathogen-forming, pathogen-producing fungal or bacterial species that are already in the environment around me. There's nothing I can do about it other than continue to work on healing what I can control. So in this particular case, applying this particular compost tea to the branches and the stems and the trunk of the tree acts as a bioprotectant. It's almost like an armor, if you will. Does that make sense? It's like an armor. I'm literally putting a fungal-based armor on my apple tree. I'm not going to use chemicals. This is nothing that anyone could do to convince me to put chemicals on my apple tree. So again, following on the line of organicism and focusing on the fertility of the soils and the trees, as well as the environment. And before you know it, your plants, well, you know what? You might end up with an apple tree that grows so many green leaves, it doesn't feel a real intense desire to produce offspring or fruit. So I believe that to be the case. It was way too comfortable in its own skin. It needed to be kicked in order to inspire fruiting. What can I say? All right, so y'all have seen enough. If you made it this far, and hopefully the audio isn't too bad. I know it's getting darker out. I waited too long to do this, but it's also, like I said, it's going to rain. So if you haven't already done so, click the like thing. It's down there. You know, it looks like a, I don't know. Click the like thing, click the sub thing if you haven't done so. A lot of you who visit my page, thank you for coming back to the page. I can see a lot of you guys are returning visitors. Thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of Creedmoor's heart. Appreciate y'all, love y'all to forever, to the end and beyond. And it's you guys why I continue to do this stuff. Y'all motivate me for the good of mankind, for the good of womankind, and for the good of everybody in between. You want to be counted for, it's okay in the garden, all is good. So yeah, please share, like, love yourself, love your neighbors. Peace and God bless.